California's new gig economy law, AB 5, was intended to reduce worker misclassification, is that essentially making it harder for companies to treat them as independent contractors. But the law's ambiguous language has already led arts organizations to postpone or even cancel productions and has sent others scrambling to raise more money to comply with the law. Joining us now is Ari Herstand, musician and one of the authorities when it comes to AB 5's impact on the music industry. Ari, great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. You've been working with politicians to really help rewrite this law. What sort of progress have you made so far on this?
Sure. So, right, unfortunately, musicians kind of got caught up in this thing. And this law was meant to help the little guys being misclassified. But unfortunately, the way that the music industry works, it doesn't really work for us. So for instance, if I'm going to play a gig at a venue and I want to hire a drummer for $200, right now, what this law says is that I have to put this drummer on payroll, get workers' comp insurance, pay payroll taxes, unemployment insurance. It's just not feasible for us.
It adds so much more to the cost.
Right. It's just not how our business really works. And so, right, I've been meeting with politicians. I met with Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez, who wrote the bill. I met with Senate Majority Leader Robert Hertzberg. And I brought a group of musicians in to say, this is how our business works. And they were pretty surprised. Like, wow, we didn't really understand how this works. Because, in one gig, I could be both classified as an employee of the venue and an employer of my band members, my backup musicians that I'm hiring. It just doesn't really work.
That's just so crazy to me that they wouldn't at least have inquired about this before they even passed the law.
Yeah.
Like, they were surprised to know that that impacted you when they passed the law.
So here's the real issue. Assemblywoman Gonzalez knew that this was going to hurt the music industry and affect the music industry. They were having discussions with the industry, but the issue is that the unions are very much in favor of this. So there is a musicians union. It's very small. It only really represents orchestra musicians, people who play on film scores. I'm not in the union. Most people are not in the union. But the unions are in favor of this. The union line, top to bottom, AFL-CIO, all the way down to the AFM in California, they are in favor of this. So because Democrats have a supermajority in California and they fund all of the politicians there, basically they're going to do what the unions ask them and tell them to do. So early on, the union said, no, this is good for us. And they thought that the musicians union represented musicians. They don't really represent us. So now we have a petition out there of 170,000 California music professionals saying this doesn't work for us. And so I've been taking this petition to politicians and saying, hey, can you actually listen to us instead of these unions that don't represent us?
Can you explain some of the changes you're specifically asking for? Because you had highlighted that some of the infrastructure just doesn't exist. You mentioned payroll, you mentioned workers' comp, that sort of thing. Do you want changes to those systems or to the laws themselves? What exactly are you asking
right
for?
now, we're just asking for an exemption in this law to go back to how it used to be, where we could classify our musicians as independent contractors. We could get classified when we play a gig as an independent contractor because, like you said at the top, arts organizations are shutting down. My friends are losing gigs left and right. They're playing in a production of West Side Story. They were going to do 9 productions of that. They literally canceled the contracts of all the musicians, and now the actors are going to sing to tracks.
Wow.
Sing to recordings for West Side Story because we can't afford these musicians anymore. So we're just asking it to go back to how it used to be. We're not asking to repeal the entire law. Other people are fighting that battle right now. We're just trying to stop the bleeding for the music industry.
How optimistic are you that you'll be able to get that exemption?
So we've been working, I literally have been having calls every day with the people who are working on this language because the politicians, they came to us, Assemblywoman Gonzalez, and she said, just give us language and I'll put it into this cleanup bill. So she's already introduced a cleanup bill. There's nothing in it right now, but it met the deadline, and she's going to include more exemptions in there. And she said she's willing to put an exemption for the music industry if we can agree upon language with the unions. So now I have been negotiating with the unions. I've been negotiating with all the other organizations in the music industry. We're kind of coming together. We're working out this language. We're very hopeful, but the law is already in place. This is already passed. We're almost 2 months into this thing. Musicians are losing work literally every day because of this. And so, the unions, they don't really have any incentive to negotiate with us because they got what they want. So I'm just trying to put on pressure on the politicians and the unions and just like, hey, we're not trying to step on your toes for other things that you're working on, but for this one issue, we need to go back to how it used to be because we are hurting right now.
All right, Ari Herstand is a musician. Thank you so much, Ari, for coming on and talking to us about that.